Hello, everyone. Welcome to another edition of First and North. I am your host for this week, Dawn Mitchell from KMSP Fox 9 here in Minneapolis, home of the, shall we say, finally 5-4 Vikings. I'm going to sprinkle the infield because we have an all-female cast for you this day, and I'm so happy about it. We're going to start with the OG in Detroit, Jennifer Hammond. Jennifer, I want to congratulate you. I think this is your 27th season, if I recall correctly, starting in Detroit. I've known you since I've got here.
Yeah, it's been a minute since I've been in Detroit, and I'll tell you, finally, I have a winning Lions team to cover, and it's been absolutely amazing. This season has been incredible, and for the Lions, they are rested, they are healthy and rejuvenated, coming off that bye week, and they are going to get some players back, some key contributors along the offensive line in Jonah Jackson. Also, center Frank Ragnow is expected to play this week against the Chargers, and David Montgomery, that former Bears running back, he has really made an impression on this offense early on. When he was away, the Lions did pick up that big win against the Raiders. Ja Gibbs went crazy, had a career day, but certainly having both of those players in the backfield will bode well for the Lions offense this week against the Chargers.
All right, we'll get more to the Lions who lead the pack here. We'll also say hello to Cassie Carlson from Chicago. You're just coming off a Bears win, and also we have Lily Zell in Milwaukee. Let's go back to you, Cassie. I know everyone is talking about backups in the NFL this year, but Tyson Bagent coming away with his second victory. I know you needed a running touchdown to help you guys out last night, but what can you say about this kid? Because Justin Fields, again, not ready to play. Is there a groundswell of support for this guy, or are people just waiting for Justin Fields to come back?
Well, I think it started when Tyson Bagent was going through becoming the backup quarterback, and just his story from getting to an undrafted rookie to now being a starter in the NFL for the last 4 weeks, and the support that he's gotten not only from the staff and the coaching staff of the Chicago Bears, but the players too. You walked into that locker room each and every week, and every player was so complimentary of Tyson Bagent, his poise, how he prepares for each and every game, and just how he was approaching his backup job. He would always say you're just one play away from going into the game, and the moment never felt too big for him. And I think you have to commend the job he's done, going 2-2 as a backup quarterback, as an undrafted rookie out of a Division II school, and he commanded the huddle. He played pretty well. I think if you look back to last night and the game he had against the Panthers and leading the Bears to the win, he took care of the football, and that was his biggest thing heading into that game. He had 3 interceptions against the Saints, and he said all he wanted to do is take care of the football, give this Bears team a chance to win. And although it wasn't the prettiest win or the prettiest performance by the offense, he didn't take a single sack either, and I think that's important. He played it safe, but he did enough where they could walk away into this mini-bye before heading to Detroit with some confidence.
What I think is interesting, too, is you also still have that chance to pick up that #1 pick because you just so happened to beat the Carolina Panthers. So that's another little feather in your cap. I know people don't ever want to say we're going to tank for the #1 pick, but it helps when you beat the team that only has 1 win.
Yeah, they're calling it a win-win situation, right? Because if the draft were to be right now, the Bears would have that #1 overall pick and then the 5th overall pick. And that all stems from the fact that going through the draft process last year, when they had the #1 overall pick and traded away to Carolina, Ryan Poles evaluated all the quarterbacks in that draft class, and he decided they didn't want to go with Bryce Young. They were going to ride with Justin Fields for at least another year, see if he could improve as a pocket passer and keep building on the performance that he had last year when he really did a great job showing off his athleticism and extending plays. But now if he can be the long-term quarterback and a franchise quarterback in Chicago. So in the Bears, it's funny because you look at their record 3-7. They've played in so many close games, though. And I think you look at the game Thursday night against the Panthers, and the worst team in the league, but they found a way to win. And that's something that's been stressed in this locker room each and every week, is that yeah, they're in these games, but finding ways to win games, especially in late game situations, is going to be key for them moving forward so they can continue to stack more and more wins. So they're right now holding on to that #1 overall pick, and Ryan Poles is going to be in another tough situation where he's going to have to decide what direction possibly he's going to go in, with keeping Justin Fields or possibly looking at someone like Caleb Williams or Drake May as the new franchise quarterback.
Right, well, we're going to go to Lily now. Lily, you guys know a thing or two about having a young quarterback that's had his struggles. You guys are 3-5, and Jordan Love, he rebounded from last week. What did you like about what you've seen in this kid? What do you think he really needs to work on? I mean, it's hard to do that roller coaster, especially where this is a totally different Packers team than in years past, and you have to make your way through it all.
Right. I mean, this Packers team started out 3-5, but I think the last month or the last 6 weeks, it's been really hard to kind of truly evaluate them because everybody else around them was not playing their best football. There were a lot of drop passes. There were plenty of penalties. The defense earlier in the year was kind of giving up a lot of third down plays, so they were just staying on the field, and the offense just isn't built to come back. So I think the last couple of weeks, it's been really hard to evaluate. Is Jordan Love the quarterback for now and also the future, or just for now? But I do think when they played the Rams, it was still a backup quarterback and Brett Rippon, but I think I really liked the progress that we saw from Jordan Love. He didn't put himself in any sort of situation to turn the ball over. There might have been a play or two where he wanted back, but he played clean football. He managed the game to the best of his abilities, and he was able to get this team and this offense down the field, and they played complementary football, which they have not done thus far this season. I mean, their defense got them 2 takeaways. They go and scored 10 points off those takeaways, and I think Jordan Love, just for some reason, is a better second-half quarterback. He made the throws he had to make. That final drive, he finally hits Christian Watson for 37 yards. That deep ball, I think, is the biggest thing he has to work on. It just hasn't hit. Either guys are not making the right catches, they're not contesting for a catch, or they're simply overthrown or underthrown. So I think that big catch to Watson really boosts his confidence, and he throws in a touchdown to Luke Musgrave there to really put the dagger in for LA and get that win. So, you know, it wasn't the prettiest either, but I think for this team right now, a win is a win. They're going to take any win they can get it, or any win any way they can get it. So I think Jordan Love showed a marked improvement, but I do think the Packers are heading into a really, really tough part of their schedule right now. They're at Pittsburgh. They play Kansas City. They play the Chiefs, the Chiefs and, of course, the Chargers. So we'll see if they can maintain that momentum. But I do feel like, despite it being an undermanned opponent, the Packers learned a lot about Jordan Love in their win last week.
You know, Jennifer, you talk about the Lions. They're playing so well this year, but now they're refreshed. Coming off the bye, facing the Chargers, you have 2 aggressive head coaches going at it. What do you see? The ceiling, there is no ceiling, I should say, for your team this year. I know that the Vikings sit in second behind you, but we're still looking up. You guys, it just seems like the sky is the limit for you.
It certainly is, and they are in control, obviously, of the division at this point in time. It's 6-2, although we've got to remember they still have 5 games against the division. So if the Minnesota Vikings can continue to play as well as they have, they certainly will have their opportunities to beat Detroit twice and within 3 weeks at the end of the season. I think the best thing the Lions have going for them right now is obviously the health. Coming off that bye week, they get some really important pieces back, as I mentioned previously, along the offensive line with center Frank Ragnow making a return after a calf injury. Also, Jonah Jackson, only 1 game in their first 8 have they had the full complement of starting offensive linemen in the lineup, and now this will be the 2nd game that they have it. Graham Glasgow now slips in as that locked in right guard position. Hal Vaitai has not really been performing to the level that the Lions have wanted him to this season. So it's going to be really great against a really kind of imposing Chargers front 4 and front 7. They were really good against the Jets. Granted, the Jets had all sorts of struggles, but they came up with 8 sacks, the Chargers did, against the Jets in that win on Monday night. So not only will they have their hands full trying to protect Jared Goff, but they'll also have David Montgomery back. So they'll have Gibbs back in the lineup, as well as David Montgomery. And those 2 guys with the play action, when Goff is working the play action, no quarterback is better. A lot of people kind of think that Jared Goff is actually a little bit overlooked. He's having a career year, completing 68% of his passes. He is in a great position right now with a solid protection unit up front. And for a Lions team that has played actually really well on the road, they travel well, their fans come, and as we all know, the LA Chargers, and in LA alone, there's not really a huge home field fan base like there is along the lines of the NFC North. So it should be a good week for the Lions, who actually this week started talking about Super Bowl. They want to get better through November. They want to be peaking in December, and they want to take this thing all the way through January. And if they can stay healthy, they actually have a pretty good shot at it.
I wasn't laughing. I was just smiling to hear the Lions talk Super Bowl in November. If you're a football fan, you kind of have to like that.
It's really uncharted territory. Let's just say that. I have never heard it, and I still cringe. Not cringe. I still just get a little anxious when they do it, because they are of a one game at a time mindset. They are only looking at the next game. And Dan Campbell is a master at making sure this team is focused and also continues to improve and get better. They spent a good amount of time actually during the bye week, including Jared Goff, talking about self-scouting, getting better in the red zone, getting better in the third quarter. Those are two things that they have not done with any kind of consistency. And if they want to get to where they want to go against teams such as, say, Kansas City in the playoffs and also in the NFC, taking on Philadelphia, perhaps at home, most likely on the road in a playoff scenario, they've absolutely got to get better in those two areas.
You know, I know exactly how it feels not to want to talk about the Super Bowl early. Twice going to the NFC Championship game with the Mike Zimmer teams. Things have fallen apart for the Vikings. I want to take the temperature in the room here on the Vikings. We sit here, we're at QB4 now. You know, you have Kirk Cousins go down. Nick Mullins was on IR. You know, then Jaron Hall comes in, he gets hurt. And now Josh Dobbs, who didn't even know the last names or even first names of some of the guys on this team and had not taken any practice snaps at all with the guys when he went into the game to turn it around. It all looked like, woo, when he had that safety, it looked like the game was going to be toast. And he was like Superman out of the phone booth, threw it for two, ran in a touchdown, and then the Vikings won. And now this fan base is rejuvenated. What is the temperature? We're going to start with you, Cassie, around the NFC North when it comes to the Vikings. You want to say, oh, look at, they stumbled out of the gate the first part of the season, but Kirk Cousins was playing his best football, and then it's a roller coaster for sure. We're strapped in for the ride. How do you view it?
Well, I think if you were to ask Bears fans in Chicago, they would say the Bears want to split with the Vikings, right? They played that game close in Chicago. That was with Kirk Cousins. That's also the game Justin Fields got hurt. And it's one of those close game situations that the Bears have had this season. And they don't feel like they're as threatening as they were last year. And a lot of that is because the run game hasn't been as productive. But we also saw the Vikings in Chicago when they didn't have Justin Jefferson. So as he's continuing to get healthy, I do think that changes the dynamic of the Vikings team and their offense as a whole, because we all know that he is considered one of the top receivers in the league, and he is definitely a threat to all opposing defenses. I think Bears fans and the view in Chicago is that the Bears can definitely beat the Vikings. So I do think there are some holes on that team. But I also think you're seeing a team that's playing for their coach and is rallying behind the fact that they have gone through so many quarterbacks, and you have the ability for someone to just walk right in there, not even knowing some of the calls and the hand signals, and go help them win a game.
Lily, it's the same thing for you. I know the Vikings just beat the Packers, but do you guys smell blood in the water? I know that it is lightning in a bottle. We're all waiting to see exactly how Josh Dobbs will perform now against the Saints at home after coming off that. But what do the Packers think?
I think the Packers still think the Vikings are just kind of still right there with the Lions. I know, Detroit still has the winning record. They're a couple games up on Minnesota in the division. But I think still, if you get Justin Jefferson back, if Josh Dobbs continues to play at the level he was playing and actually gets to learn the playbook, the defense comes along well. I mean, the running game hopefully will get better. And I feel bad that Cam Akers is now out for the year for you guys. But I think this is still a really talented team that could, keep Detroit on its hits on its heels per se in the division, because again, you're going to get Justin Jefferson back. You're hopefully going to get the run game going, and you have a quarterback who has the wheels to really keep this team in any sort of game, and we saw it against Atlanta. I mean, you guys were never really out of it because you had Josh Dobbs, and I think he's going to continue to get better if he is going to be that main man moving forward. But I still think that this is going to be a tough team, and granted, it's just unfortunate that Kirk will be out for the year, and he was coming off such a great season thus far. But looking at the Packers, they do play the Vikings on Sunday Night Football in Minneapolis. So while we can say, they don't have Kirk Cousins anymore, you guys still have a very formidable team. I think home field advantage, especially at US Bank Stadium, is phenomenal for you guys. So I think for that Packers team, they think that they can win it, but I just don't think that they're going to be able to, especially in a primetime setting in Minneapolis. But I do still think that despite losing Kirk, you guys picked up a good quarterback, and I think he can win you guys maybe double-digit games potentially.
Yeah, a mobile quarterback. We haven't seen that for quite some time. Jennifer, I know the Lions are one of two teams top 6 rushing and passing. The Vikings defense is tough and formidable, perhaps not as talked about as the offense. Well, how do the Lions feel about facing a Vikings defense that it doesn't matter what week, somebody steps up, and then Danielle Hunter, he's always a beast up front, whether he's playing defensive end, whether he slides up, mostly outside linebacker now in his career, but he's pretty fierce.
I'll tell you, just a few days before the trade deadline, it was really disconcerting to me that the Lions were not going to be able to get Danielle Hunter in Detroit and in a Lions uniform, because he would have been a really nice addition and piece for this team. Certainly a pass rush is something that if the Lions do have a lacking point this season on defense, they've been excellent against the run, number 2 in the league, but they need to get more pressure on quarterbacks. And certainly a rushing quarterback is one that's really been kind of the thorn in their side. Between the game against in Baltimore, they really struggled trying to contain the quarterback, and also against Seattle, it's been really tough. Geno Smith, guys that can run, cause the Lions infinite problems. So I do think that's one thing that's going to be of concern for them as they get set to face the Vikings. If anybody in the Detroit area, fans, players, analysts, anyone is taking the Vikings lightly, I think they're crazy, because the Vikings have been there, done that, as you alluded to. They've been to a couple of NFC championship games. They have been very good. They've owned the division as of late. So it's going to be really important for Detroit to just take care of business to get to that point. They have 9 games remaining. Of those 9 games, 3 are against opponents with winning records. They just so happen to play one of those teams, the Vikings, twice in the final 3 games of the season. And at 5-4, they are right on the Lions' heels. If the Lions go to LA this weekend and lay an egg against the Chargers, it's going to be really tight. And we have seen the Lions come from behind in games to try to fight their way back. So we know that they've got a great intestinal fortitude to rise to the challenge and overcome adversity, especially against all the injuries they've had. But we have yet to see this Lions team with any kind of pressure in the division. They've had a really comfortable lead most of the way. And if things start to get tight down the stretch, it's going to be new territory for this team come late December.
And Cassie, the Bears licking their chops, they get to face the Lions after the Lions face the Chargers. So if that aforementioned possible egg laying happens, I have a feeling that the Bears will pounce. They're getting a little bit more confidence. I know Thursday night football sometimes isn't always the best kind of football, but you never know when it's a division battle.
Yeah, and I think you have to watch out for how the Bears defense is playing. There's been a lot of drama up at Hallis Hall, the Bears practice facility this year, and especially on the defensive side. And it started after week 1 when they lost their defensive coordinator. But ever since then, head coach Matt Eberflus has been calling the defensive plays, and all of the players had said they are seeing him call it way more aggressively, and they're seeing themselves play way better. And I think you have to give the defense credit with how they played against the Panthers. It isn't the best offense, but they finally got pressure on a quarterback. That is something that they have not been able to do really the last 2 seasons. Last in the league in sacks, they only had 10 going into the Thursday night game. And then you see the impact of bringing in a difference maker on the defensive line with defensive end Montez Sweat. They paid him big money after they traded for him at the trade deadline. 4 years, $98 million guaranteed. A lot of people said that's overpaying for a defensive end pass rusher who hasn't had a single double-digit sack season. But against the Panthers, he had 3 quarterback hits. He also had one against the Saints just a couple days after he arrived in Chicago. And what that did was open up other guys like Yannick Ngakoue, who they signed this offseason, bringing him in to add to the pass rush. Justin Jones, an interior defensive lineman, finally got to the quarterback. 3 quarterback sacks in that game when they have just 10 on the season was a huge difference maker. And I think what that's allowing them to do, while also getting healthier in the secondary, Eddie Jackson and Jaquan Brisker, their 2 safeties, are finally playing together on the field consistently for the first time since week 1. It's allowing the secondary to be honest and play their game. When you don't have any pressure on the quarterback, it's basically a free-for-all for those quarterbacks to stand back there in the pocket and just wait for their receivers to get open, and that's been a huge problem for this team. So I think this Bears defense is starting to come together. The next step for them would be to get takeaways and turnovers and force those, because that is a huge part of Matty Eberflus's defensive philosophy. It's part of his HITS principle. I don't know if you've heard about it. Hustle, intensity, takeaways, and smart football. And so they haven't been able to really get those takeaways so far this season. That would be the next step, where this defense, who's been holding teams, and they held the Panthers to just one no touchdowns last night, to go into Detroit against a very good offense. And I think that'll be a good litmus test of just how good they are, because they did invest in it. They brought in Tremaine Edmonds, TJ Edwards, Eddie Jackson. They drafted two guys in defensive backs last year in Jaquan Brisker and Kyler Gordon, and just starting to see if that can all come together. As this offense is still figuring things out, the defense is giving them opportunities to win games at least.
You know, takeaways is the perfect transition, Lily, because now you guys are facing Pittsburgh. They have a tough D. I think they're third in the NFL in takeaways this season with 16. Now, we mentioned Jordan Love playing better. He did not have a pick in his last game, but I think that was the first game that he did not have a pickoff since week 2. So how important is obviously ball security any type of week, but especially facing Pittsburgh, where you know Mike Tomlin is going to have that crew hungry.
It's going to be the number one thing. I think that was emphasized this week during practice for the Green Bay Packers. They have emphasized protecting the football and do not let it go, because they had 2 turnovers, 2 back-to-back fumbles. The first one being kind of a fluky play by their rookie receiver, and then their veteran Aaron Jones fumbles on back-to-back drives. And luckily, their defense was able to keep the Rams out of the end zone both times. So that worked out fine against LA. But when you're playing a team like the Steelers, who rely on the big play, the explosive play, if they can get down the field pretty quickly, and if they're on the field for an extended amount of time, I'm not sure how this Packers defense is going to hold up. But then again, on the other side of the football, they just have to protect it, because TJ Watt's coming to town. I mean, he's a Pewaukee native who just wants to, I'm sure, has dreaming of sacks against, you know, his old hometown team. So TJ Watt, I'm sure, is going to have a field day. The Packers offensive line, I think, has maybe shored some things up, but they've really struggled this year. I mean, you know, they lose David Bakhtiari. Elton Jenkins, their other Pro Bowl left guard, has not really been playing to his standard this season. So there's a lot of shuffling on Jordan Love's blind side. And so this offensive line really needs to get things shored up, because TJ Watt and company, they are coming for Jordan Love, and they're going to look in the secondary to pick him off as well. But we'll see if the Packers offense can really play a clean game. They haven't had that in quite some time this season. They just have found ways to really hurt themselves, and that comes with turning the ball over. So I think if they can play a clean game and they can actually score another touchdown in the first half, which, believe it or not, they did for the first time since week 2 on Sunday this past week against the Rams, they might be in a better spot. But this is going to be a big challenge. They're going to be in Pittsburgh playing a Mike Tomlin team that we all know is gritty. They're tough. The fans are going to be in it. And this is a young Packers team that hasn't really responded traditionally well on the road. So we'll see if they get punched in the mouth, if they can protect the football, keep Jordan Love clean, and just play a winning brand of football. Because I think the last thing this team wants to do is say, hey, we found some improvement in the win against LA, and they lay a goose egg in Pittsburgh, because the schedule gets tough for them. So I think if they can emphasize those keys this week, I think they will be in a good spot. But I'm just going to be, you know, shocked to see if the Packers team can play clean football, because it hasn't happened in quite some time.
Oh, you know, Lily, you mentioned you have a young team, though, right? They're just earning their chops. A lot of your rookies are playing well. So the beginning of the Vikings season, it was all shooting themselves in the foot and turning the ball over. Almost every single game is like, are you kidding me? So hold on tight. It could get better. All right, we're going to finish up with you, Jennifer, since we started with you. The red zone for the Lions. If I have to find one little thing that I can kind of like poke the bear about, what's going on there with their red zone? They only score half the time, or less than half the time they get there.
Yeah, it's really been a struggle for the Lions, and that is one point of emphasis that they went into the bye fully aware of, and they know that they need to continue to do that. I mean, I suppose there are worse problems to have when you're able to convert and score the second most points in the league and have the number 2 overall offense and still struggle in the red zone. So they have worked on that. They've gotten back to, I guess, the simplistics of it. A lot of it will improve with David Montgomery. They have been really short in the red zone run game, because of the absence of David Montgomery. He's much more of a tough mutter. He's been grinding yards out for the Lions early in the season when he was in the lineup. With that rib injury, things have started to stagnate just a little bit with the Lions. It's been great, though. I mean, when you see Ja Gibbs run from the outside and go 27 yards for a touchdown, I think there are worse problems to have because they have been scoring. They haven't struggled to score points. The offense has been very efficient, and as I mentioned, it all begins and ends with Jared Goff, but he has to be able to work that play action. So I think once they have Montgomery and they're solidified along the offensive line, there's nothing that Frank Ragnow, Taylor Decker, Jonah Jackson, Graham Glasgow, nothing that they love more than being able to pound that ball in the red zone.
Well, it is never boring. Jennifer, Cassie, Lily, we know it's only November and crazier things have happened in the NFC North. So I just say we shall buckle up. But I have enjoyed this all-female First and North. I think this is the first time it's happened, and kudos to all of you because I love seeing my fellow women in the NFC North and on the sidelines and in the driver's seat. So thank you so much for joining us this week. I really appreciate it.
Let's do it again.
Thanks, Dawn.
All right, let's do it again. We'll see you again next time, everyone. Thank you for joining us on First and North.